John Wayne Gacy was a man who epitomized the duality of evil. He was a successful contractor, a loving father and grandfather, and an active member of his community, even dressing up as Pogo the Clown for charity events. Yet beneath this veneer of normalcy lurked a monster. Gacy preyed on young boys and men, torturing and murdering them in his suburban Chicago home. His crimes shocked the nation, not just for their brutality, but also for the unsettling ease with which he blended into everyday life. The image of Gacy in his clown costume, a twisted mockery of joy and innocence, has become synonymous with the dark side of the American dream. Gacy's ability to maintain this facade of respectability while committing unspeakable acts makes his case all the more terrifying. John Wayne Gacy Jr. was born in Chicago, Illinois, in 1942. On the surface, his childhood seemed ordinary. He was the second of 3 children, raised in a working-class neighborhood. However, behind closed doors, Gacy's early life was troubled. His father, an alcoholic and World War I veteran, was physically and emotionally abusive. Gacy's attempts to gain his father's approval were constantly met with scorn and derision. This rejection played a significant role in shaping Gacy's fragile psyche and his need for control and validation. As a child, Gacy exhibited signs of disturbance. He was a loner, prone to sudden fits of rage. He suffered from blackouts, often finding himself unable to account for periods of time. Gacy later estimated that between the ages of 14 and 18, he had spent almost a year in hospital. He attributed the decline of his grades to missing school. Despite these early warning signs, Gacy's descent into utter depravity was not immediate. Gacy left home in 1962 and drove to Las Vegas, Nevada with $136 to his name. Gacy worked in the Las Vegas ambulance service before being transferred to Palm Mortuary. He worked as a mortuary attendant for 3 months, observing morticians embalming bodies and occasionally serving as a pallbearer. He got married in 1964, had children and built a seemingly successful life for himself. In August 1967, Gacy sexually assaulted 15-year-old Donald Voorhees Jr., the son of Donald Edwin Voorhees, a local politician. Over the following months, Gacy abused several other young men and boys. In March 1968, Voorhees told his father that Gacy had sexually assaulted him. Voorhees Sr. immediately informed the police, who arrested Gacy and charged him with sodomy. Gacy vehemently denied the charges and demanded to take a polygraph test. On September 12, Gacy was ordered to undergo a psychiatric evaluation at the Psychiatric Hospital of the University of Iowa. On November 7, 1968, Gacy pleaded guilty to 1 count of sodomy, but not guilty to the charges related to other youths. He claimed Voorhees had offered himself to him and that he had acted out of curiosity. His story was not believed. Gacy was convicted of sodomy on December 3rd and sentenced to 10 years imprisonment. That same day, Gacy's wife petitioned for divorce and sole custody of their 2 children. The divorce was finalized on September 18, 1969. Gacy never saw his first wife or children again. He was granted parole with 12 months probation on June 18, 1970, having served just 18 months of his 10-year sentence. By the early 1970s, John Wayne Gacy had established himself in Norwood Park Township, Illinois. In August 1971, he became engaged to Carol Hoff, whom he had briefly dated in high school. Carol and her 2 young daughters from a previous marriage moved into the house soon after. They were married on July 1, 1972. He was a successful contractor, known for his work ethic and community involvement. Gacy was active in local politics, even serving as the Democratic precinct captain. His neighbors knew him as a friendly, outgoing man, always willing to lend a helping hand. He was particularly popular with the neighborhood children, often entertaining them as Pogo the Clown at birthday parties and charitable events. Beneath this veneer of normalcy, however, Gacy's dark side festered. He had already begun to prey on young men, luring them to his home with promises of work, money, or simply a place to party. By 1975, Gacy had told his wife that he was bisexual. He began spending most evenings away from home, only to return in the early morning. Carol observed Gacy bringing teenage boys into his garage in the early hours and also found gay pornography and men's wallets inside the house. When she confronted Gacy about these items, he informed her angrily that it was none of her business. Gacy's victims were often vulnerable, runaways or drifters, easy targets for his manipulative charm. Once inside his house of horrors, Gacy would overpower his victims, subjecting them to unspeakable acts of torture and abuse before finally taking their lives. He often buried his victims' bodies in the crawl space beneath his house, a gruesome testament to his depravity. Despite his outward success, Gacy's life was beginning to unravel. In October 1975, after a heated argument, Carol asked Gacy for a divorce. Rumors of his proclivities circulated, but his standing in the community and his carefully constructed facade of normalcy protected him from serious scrutiny. In 1975, a young man who had worked for Gacy disappeared. His parents, convinced that Gacy was involved, went to the police. However, their concerns were dismissed. Gacy, with his clean record and upstanding reputation, was above suspicion. This would become a recurring theme in Gacy's story. Time and again, suspicions were raised only to be brushed aside. People simply could not reconcile the image of the affable contractor and community volunteer with the monster he truly was. This denial, both individual and collective, allowed Gacy to continue his reign of terror for years. It was not until 1978, when the disappearances became too frequent and too close to home, that the authorities finally began to take notice. The disappearance of 15-year-old Robert Piest on December 11, 1978 marked a turning point in the investigation into John Wayne Gacy. Piest, a high school student who worked part-time at a pharmacy, vanished after telling his mother that he was going to meet Gacy to discuss a potential job. Gacy's subsequent statements regarding the events varied, although in one of his initial statements, he claimed Piest failed to resist as he removed his trousers. He also stated that as he placed the rope around Piest's neck, the boy was crying, scared. Gacy even admitted to having received a phone call from a business acquaintance as Piest was dying. This time, the police could no longer ignore the growing number of missing boys and young men connected to Gacy. A search warrant was issued for Gacy's home on the 13th of December. The stench of decay, overpowering and undeniable, hit the officers as soon as they entered the house. It was the smell of death, emanating from the crawl space beneath the floorboards. There, buried in the dirt, were the bodies of 26 young men and boys. 3 more victims were later found buried on Gacy's property. 4 more were discarded in the Des Plaines River, their lives brutally cut short. The discovery of the bodies sent shockwaves through America. The sheer scale of Gacy's crimes, coupled with his seemingly normal life, was beyond comprehension. The nation was forced to confront the horrifying reality that a monster had been living among them, hiding in plain sight. The image of Gacy's house, an unassuming ranch-style home transformed into a tomb, became a chilling reminder of the potential for evil to lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. As the investigation into Gacy's crimes intensified, the full extent of his depravity became horrifyingly clear. The crawl space beneath his house, once a place of mundane storage, had been transformed into a macabre graveyard. The bodies, some wrapped in plastic, others simply discarded in the dirt, told a silent story of unimaginable suffering. The stench of death permeated the house, a grim testament to the horrors that had unfolded within its walls. Each body represented a life stolen, a family shattered. The victims, mostly teenagers and young men, had been lured to Gacy's home with promises of work, money, or companionship. They had placed their trust in a monster, only to have that trust brutally betrayed. The details of Gacy's crimes, revealed through meticulous forensic investigation, painted a gruesome picture. The torture, the restraint, the cold, calculated brutality of his actions shocked even the most hardened investigators. Gacy, however, seemed unfazed, even proud, boasting of his ability to kill on demand. His lack of remorse, his chilling detachment from the suffering he had inflicted, solidified his place in the annals of criminal history as one of America's most notorious serial killers. Just before Christmas, on the evening of December 20th, 1978, with the police closing in on him, Gacy stopped by his attorney's office. He drank a couple of shots of whiskey and said, "I've been the judge, jury, and executioner of many, many people." For the next few hours until early morning, Gacy confessed in detail to the kidnapping, torture, rape, and murder of 33 young men and boys. Amirante, his attorney, didn't say a word as Gacy spoke. The next day, Gacy was arrested by police outside a McDonald's in Niles, Illinois. The trial of John Wayne Gacy began in February 1980. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence: the bodies found beneath his house, the testimony of surviving victims, and Gacy's own chilling confessions. After a 6-week trial, Gacy was found guilty on 33 counts of murder. He was sentenced to death. For the families, the verdict brought a sense of justice, but it could never erase their pain. The case shook the nation, revealing that monsters can lurk beneath ordinary facades. On May 10, 1994, John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection. His death marked the end of a chapter that continues to haunt the national consciousness. John Wayne Gacy's legacy is a chilling reminder of hidden darkness. His case changed criminal profiling, showing the dangers of overlooking seemingly normal individuals. Gacy's ability to blend into society while committing heinous acts challenged conventional wisdom. His crimes led to changes in law enforcement, especially in handling missing persons cases. The Gacy case emphasized the importance of taking every report seriously and connecting seemingly unrelated disappearances. Gacy's compartmentalization provided insights into psychopathic minds, informing criminal profiling and forensic psychology. His case reminds us of the need for vigilance and awareness in our communities. John Wayne Gacy's case continues to fascinate and horrify, offering a chilling glimpse into the mind of a serial killer. From a psychological perspective, Gacy exhibited many classic traits of psychopathy: a lack of empathy, remorse and guilt, superficial charm, manipulativeness, and a grandiose sense of self-worth. His troubled childhood, marked by abuse and rejection from his father, likely played a role in shaping his personality. Gacy's need for control, his desire to exert power over others, stemmed from his own feelings of inadequacy and powerlessness. His alter ego, Pogo the Clown, served as both a mask and a release for his dark impulses. As Pogo, Gacy could indulge in his fantasies, blurring the lines between reality and his twisted desires. The clown suit became a symbol of his duality, representing the joy and laughter he craved but could never truly experience. Gacy's case highlights the complexity of evil, demonstrating that there is no single profile or set of characteristics that defines a serial killer. It underscores the need for a multifaceted approach to understanding criminal behavior, one that takes into account individual psychology, social context, and environmental factors.